A very good morning to dear students. We can see the topic post-colonial literature, an overview. It is very important to know this, to understand the topics given in The Empire Writes Back. So we can see it now. So I would like to quote the words of Franz Fanon and what he said in his The Wretched of the Earth. And it was published in 1961. The colonized must resist the colonizer's attempt to impose his own cultural values, his own language, his own history, and his own mythology. So we can see the colonized, the people in the erstwhile colonies, reject the colonizer's attempt to thrust their cultural values, their language, their history, and their beliefs and their ideology on the colonized. And they did this. They resisted the influence of the colonizers through literature. That is what is called post-colonial literature. We can see the special features of post-colonial literature now. It is well known that the lives of the people in all the colonies, the erstwhile colonies, have been shaped, have been molded by the experience of colonialism. They were under the influence of colonialism. And this kind of colonial experience formed new ideologies, new thoughts, new perceptions in those people. And they wanted to express it through literature. So the term post-colonial is used to show how the culture of the former colonies have been affected by the imperial domination, the imperial culture, by the influence of the colonizers from the moment, not after they have acquired or they have obtained independence from the colonizers, but this influence started from the moment of colonization to the present day, because this influence still stays with them, still lingers among the colonized. So we can see that it has started from the first moment of the first day of the colonization to the present day. The literature of the USA also should be placed under the category of post-colonial literature because it was one of the colonies of Britain. But it has acquired the status of an independent nation because of its current position of power, the power, political power, economic power, and the cultural power. And it plays the neo-colonizing role also. What do you mean by neo-colonizing role? With its political, economic, and cultural means, it controls and weakens and exploits the weaker countries, as the former colonizers did. And that's why it is no longer, it is not called a dependent nation on the colonizers, on the imperial center. It has become an independent nation, and its literature can be called national literature. It is no more called the post-colonial literature. And we have to say it as it has emerged, as USA's literature has emerged as a national literature, it is paradigmatic. So it serves as a model to post-colonial literature that has been produced in all the other erstwhile colonies. It serves as a model. So other colonies, other erstwhile colonies also can emerge, can grow into a great country, and they can become independent nations, and they can free themselves, extricate themselves completely from the influence of the imperial center, And their literature also need not be called post-colonial literature because it will be free from the influence of the imperial country, the imperial center, and it can become national literature as the literature of the USA. So now the literature is distinguished by its special and distinct characteristics. Literature here refers to post-colonial literature. Now we can see how it distinguishes itself by its special features. And we can see the influence of the language. The language, the English language, has been used as a tool to exercise imperial domination. It has been used by the imperial center, that is British Empire, as a tool to exercise its domination over the erstwhile colonies, former colonies. And English language was introduced as a privileged academic subject in the 19th century. So at the time itself, no, it was used as an academic subject, a privilege, a special. It was enjoying a special status because the British people would have known that changes could be introduced or a country could be controlled only through the language. So it was introduced in the educational institutions as a privileged academic subject in the 19th century itself. The British used English literature also to maintain control of the natives under the guise of liberal education. So literature was educated as a liberal education. And so people were forced to learn. The people in the erstwhile colonies, former colonies, were forced to learn English. Because it was introduced to change the people, to civilize the people, to refine people, to teach them the culture of the British Empire, because the British culture was considered the most civilized culture by the imperial center. So now we can trace out the development of post-colonial literature. So it was very common to understand that the people who were suppressed for a long time would come out of it, they try to extricate themselves from the influence. And so the national and regional consciousness, the consciousness of their own culture, grew among the people during colonization itself. And as a result, the post-colonial literature also has been developed through different stages. So we can see how the post-colonial literature developed through different stages. So, how the post-colonial literature is different from the imperial center. These differences constitute the speciality of post-colonial literature, how they have distinguished themselves from the books written, the literature produced by the imperial center, that is the British Empire. The first texts of post-colonial literature were written in English language by the representatives of imperial power. So those people, the people who visited our country, who stayed in our country, who stayed in these colonies, wrote books in English, in their own language. So they were the representatives of imperial power, imperial center. So those people were the gentrified settlers, the settlers who came to all these colonies to take care of the administration, to monitor the people, to rule over the people. They were the representatives of the British Empire. Not only those settlers, the travelers, the people who came to see these countries, sightseers, Anglo-Indians, and West African administrators, and Mem Sahibs, the wives of these settlers, the administrators, were the representatives who wrote books in English when they were staying in the colonies. So we can have some examples went was Australia, and fruits, Oceania, served as good examples for the literature of the first stage. These texts actually have been formed as the basis of the indigenous culture. So they don't help the indigenous culture to grow through literature, or they are not they have not been integrated with the existing native culture also. So they have nothing to do with the native culture, because their entire focus was on the culture of the empire. And we could see the emphasis was laid on their home. So they called Britain their home. They called the empire their home over the native. So they did not care for the native. Though they were staying in the colonies, they called it the native, and so they preferred their home to the native. And it could be seen in Rudyard Kipling's poem on Christmas in India. So an example can be taken from this. So he has given the description of Christmas in the heat of India. And so from this, we could understand how he preferred the cool Christmas in England. So this difference constitutes the special features of the post-colonial literature. In the second stage, the post-colonial literature was produced by the natives themselves, by the educated natives and missionaries and the outcasts under imperial license. So the literature was produced only under imperial license because it was supervised by the imperial center. A lot of poems and prose were written by the educated upper class Indians. So they could form a part of post-colonial literature in the second stage of its development. And if you want example for the post-colonial literature produced by the missionaries, we could take Thomas Moffola's Chaka. And the convict, an educated convict was among them. So the convicts, under special permission from Britain, could write works. And one such work could be seen in James Tucker's Ralph Rashleigh. And these could serve as good examples for post-colonial writings in the second stage. And they worked under restriction. They were under the direct control of the imperial ruling class. The imperial ruling class decided the acceptable form that could be used by these representatives of natives or the missionaries or the people who wrote post-colonial literature, who wrote books, who produced post-colonial literature. And it only decided the acceptable form. And it could help them in publishing and distributing the works. And so they had to work under such a restriction that they could not work independently. And they could not bring out what they wanted to convey through their post-colonial literature. So we have to understand that these works are not completely free from the influence of the British Empire. And so they could not completely explore the anti-imperial potency, the power of anti-imperial policies, how they have resisted the imperial policies, and how they could deal with the theme of subversion. Subversion is nothing but the rebellion, right? How they could rebelled against the British Empire. So such rebellious feelings also could not be completely explored in the post-colonial literature because they were working under the control of the British Empire. Independent writing was possible only after the attainment of political freedom by all these post-colonial countries, by all these erstwhile colonies, by all the colonies. And even after the political freedom, the people of the former colonies are not completely free from the coloniality or imperial experience because they linger in these countries. So they have got only political freedom. and they are not culturally or what can we say? They are not culturally or socially free. So they have been under the influence of British Empire still stays with them, still lingers in the minds of all these people. So it's a great struggle of these people to free themselves from the influence of, from the cultural influence of the empire. Because no, still the empire dominates over the erstwhile colonies culturally. The post-colonial literature is considered only as an offshoot, as a branch of the parent tree. The British texts act as the touchstones of taste and value. So they alone, only the post-colonial literature could be compared with the British texts to consider its value. Because the British texts act as the touchstones of taste and value, and so it should be, the post-colonial literature should raise itself to the level of the British text to be considered as valuable. And the English, the received standard English that has been used, it is called RS English, that has been used in Southeast England, is considered the standard norm for language. That is that all the colonies are expected to use this RS English. And the weight of antiquity also still continues to dominate the cultural production of post-colonial literature. And so because it is parent, the British text and the British literature is the parent, and so it has the right to guide, and it alone can guide. Because of its antiquity, it alone can guide the post-colonial literature produced in all these erstwhile colonies. So these views have been existing not only in British Empire, not only in Britain, and it is no more an empire, but also in all the erstwhile colonies. So the writers of these erstwhile colonies are struggling to grow out of this influence. So the writers of erstwhile colonies try to reject the colonial legacy. So it is, they don't want to carry it on because they have their own legacy, their own cultural legacy. And so, and they strive for a cultural dependency. So they have to free themselves from the cultural dependency. They want to be culturally independent, and they could assert their cultural identity. And so this is what we see as an introduction to the post-colonial literature, and how it tries its best, strives very hard to grow out of the influence of the British or the imperial domination, the British domination or the imperial domination. I hope you have understood. It can serve as the introduction. Then we can understand the topics given in The Empire Writes Back better. Thank you. Have a nice day.